Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday. Friday. I don't know where I got Friday from. Good morning to you. Happy Monday to you. It hopefully it was a great weekend for you. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It was a little rainy here in Charlotte, little chilly, but we made it out alive. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Glenn. Good morning, Sandy. Guys, if your first time being on here, say good morning to everybody on the Facebook world. Say good morning to you people in the chat world. And don't you worry, I'll explain to you what happened to my face here very shortly. But good morning to everybody today. Hopefully, everybody had a wonderful weekend. I did. And I got a little beat up as well. I got myself in a little bit of a fight. I had our first morning as well where Bryce wanted nothing to do with going to school. So that was a little entertaining. Good morning, Bob. Good morning, Glenn, Jennifer. Good morning to you all out there. So my name is Brock Zevan. I'm a life coach. I'm a business coach. I'm a real estate agent, and I'm a dad. And I got in a fight with Bryce. And this is what happens. I was wrestling with him. This is what happens when you're reactive to cutting fingernails. All right. So it looks like a cat scratched me. But let me just tell you, on Saturday, I was pretty scarred up. So Bryce and I were wrestling and I didn't realize it. And I get done wrestling with him. And I'm like, man, my face feels a little bit like beat up. And yeah, he scratched me like no other. And so I was a little competitive and we were having a good time. And but yeah, he scratched me up pretty good. And let me just tell you, we immediately went to the nail clippers and we started to cut those fingernails, and those were like claws. So I had soccer on Saturday, and Bryce's mom, Laura, she's like, what happened to your face? I was like, Bryce, I had to cut his fingernails. Man, they were terrible. So anyways, that's what took place over with me this weekend with the kids. But Bryce had his first soccer game. He scored a goal. Brielle had a soccer game. They ended up in a 1-1 tie. I mean, we had a fun time over the weekend. So hopefully you did as well. So wanted to share with you today's topic is achievers versus average. Now, I shared this with you guys the other day in reference to numbers. And I'm going to give you some stats here of basically what we do each and every morning. And part of it becomes the statistics that when I went to the John Maxwell event on Friday, which it just blows me away, the knowledge that I pulled away from John Maxwell. And one of the books that I'm going to be sharing with you is From Failing Forward. And to be honest with you, that wasn't even the name of the event. What I learned a lot is what happens behind the scenes with John on how he comes up with books, how he comes up with strategies. Patrick Leonasi was phenomenal. The Six Geniuses. If you get a chance to read that book, strongly recommend it. If you have a team, it's a must read. He broke it down, and I was just flabbergasted at the knowledge. Like it just makes complete sense in how to orchestrate a team and everything else. So, anyways, so the title today is Achievers versus Average. In one of the lines that I took from it talks about there's an old joke, and I'm going to go back to my statistic here in a minute, but there's an old joke about successful people. And the old joke goes, never ask what's in a hot dog while you're eating one. The idea that if you know what goes in it, you'll never eat it again. And it's the same mindset for those people who are successful. It's like, man, I want to be successful. I want to be an achiever. But then when you find out what goes in it, you're like, I don't know if I want to be that. I don't know. That seems like a lot of work. That seems like a lot going on. And so the message I'm going to share with you today is literally, I'm going to read it to you. It's called Achievers versus Average. And when we based our numbers, guys, we reach out on Mondays to about roughly about 1,000 people each morning. And when we look at our numbers, we have about 20 people who come on the call on our morning routine. Typically, it's a little bit higher depending on the theme of what we have. But statistically, when you take a look at achievers versus average, it usually comes out to about 10%. Now, people like to say the 80-20 rule, but we're finding out more and more as the market, the inflation, as the economy and everything else gets harder. Guess what happens to the numbers? And that is why we're seeing 10% to 12% instead of the 20% anymore, is because it's more challenging. It's more difficult. Internet has become more competitive. All these things take place. And so it's a little bit harder. And hence the hot dog, where boy, it tastes really good. But let me just tell you, I don't know if I want it anymore, because when I hear what's in it, it might not be for me. So let me read to you on achievers versus average. And this comes from Failing Forward from John Maxwell. What makes achievers excel? Why do some people skyrocket while some people plummet? You know what I'm talking about. You could call it luck, you could call it a blessing, or you can call it the Midas touch. Call it whatever you want. But the truth is that some people just seem to achieve incredible things in spite of tremendous difficulties, i.e., what I was telling you about the economy. Okay. They finish in the top 5% in nationwide sales for their company after losing key accounts. Notice I said 10 to 12%. He even says it's really 5%. Good morning, Pat. They find indigenous ways to increase profits for their department in face of budget cuts. These achievers earn their graduate degree while raising 2 children as a single parent. They discover awesome business opportunities while colleagues don't see any at all. Or they recruit winner after winner into their organization despite what looks like an anemic labor pool. It doesn't matter what kind of work they do, wherever they are, they just seem to make things happen. Certainly, all people like to think of themselves as above average, but achievers seem to leave average in the dust, so far behind them that ordinary seems to be almost like a distant memory. Yet, what makes the difference? Why do some people achieve so much? Is it their family background? Is it wealth? Is it opportunities given to them more? Is it high morals? The absence of hardship? What is it? Nope. None of these things are key. And when it comes right down to it, I know only one factor that separates those who consistently shine from those who don't. And for those taking notes, here it is. The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception of and response to failure. Nothing else has the same kind of impact on people's ability to achieve and to accomplish whenever their minds are and what their hearts desire. Accept failure as a price of success today and keep striving forward. I tell you, when I read this, and I read it a couple of days ago, and then I had the event on Friday, and to be able to hear John Maxwell speak, and to be able to take that it's even italicized in here, the difference between average people and achieving people. This isn't a very complicated sentence. Tell me if it's complicated. Tell me if this word is a very 25-cent word. Like, it's not a very I wonder what that even means. I don't even understand that, because it says their perception of, and I love the word of, and the response to failure. There's a line that says, fail early, fail often, but always fail forward. Many times people always wonder, what am I going to do? They'll ask me questions like, well, Brock, what do you think? I mean, that's how I got my position of being a life coach. That's how I got an entrepreneur coach, was basically, they're like, how'd that happen? How'd you become a life coach? Basically, I had a lot of failures in my life, a lot of challenges in my life, and I had to figure out how to get out of them. I had to continue to fail forward. In some capacity, the failing was very, very emotional. The failing was very challenging. I don't even know how many times Mike Castor has been part of it where I failed at growing teams. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 teams I failed at. Literally the entire team left. Yet at those moments when you think of, you're like, man, what am I doing wrong? It's gotta be like, yeah, I don't understand it. But in those moments, that's actually when I was learning. I was like, okay, well, that way didn't work. Let me try it a different way. How many successful people do you know have gone bankrupt? I believe Walt Disney's gone bankrupt at least, I think, 9 times or 13 times. It's a number that many of us don't even want to begin with. It's like when people tell me they've gone bankrupt, I'm like, oh man, what do you got growing? What are you getting ready to start? Because when you go through bankruptcy, when you go through heartache, when you go through failure, that is when you learn. But most people don't even get to that point. They don't even get to that position because they're like, I don't know. And that's why I love the hot dog line. Because when they find out what's in it, it's like, I don't know. That doesn't sound very tasty. That doesn't sound very good. Wait a minute. You're saying, I mean, literally, if you saw my calendar, after I got done John Maxwell, I said to myself, I said, I'm not reading enough. And I read 10 pages every day, and that might not sound like enough, but it's about 70 some books I've read in the last a little bit, 19 months now. And that to me does seem like a lot than the average person who reads like 1 or 2 books. And I said to myself, and that's why I love being around high level people. Mike Castor was just telling me that he was at this national property management rental convention that he was at. He's like, it was the best thing I've ever been to. And I guarantee you there were successful people making 7 figures, 8 figures in that group. I also got to believe that John Maxwell definitely makes more than 8 to 9 figures. And guess what? These people, Eric Thomas, Patrick Liciani, this guy, Chris, shoot, I forgot his last name all of a sudden. He's one of the bigwigs. And then he starts talking about football the entire time. I'm like, man, Chris, well, you got to tell me who's your team. He goes, my son is the tight end for Georgia. I said, what? He goes, yeah. I said, boy, you've had a stellar 2 years, haven't you? He goes, yeah, it's been fun. But around high level people and high level coaches and high level organizations and I mean, you can't get any higher than John Maxwell, I feel, after being and listening to him. It was one of the most phenomenal conversations I've heard. It was one of the most important things that I get to be a part of. And to be able to say, like, after I left there, I was like, I'm not reading enough. I'm not doing enough to be able to be at the highest level. So I'm going to challenge you. If you want to be an achiever, you're not doing enough. And he might say, well, and it's okay. It's 100% okay, because guess what it is? Achieving people is their perception of. Because if your perception of is that you're doing plenty, then you're perfectly fine. But I'm pretty sure you're on this call because your perception of is you're not still hitting your highest potential. Because your perception of is still not where it needs to be. And I'm going to say and go on a limb here, and I'm going to talk to somebody right now that I think you're not failing enough. I think you're not doing what you really want to do. There's something deep inside of you that you might not be really doing, because the fear of failure creeps inside of you. There's something inside of you that says, I don't know, maybe it's, and you know what I love? This is the best excuse I've been hearing, because I'm blessed and fortunate that I've been surrounded by more people who are older than me, 50s and 60s. And I hear this. If you don't know John Maxwell's age, go Google it. If you don't know Andy Reid's age, go Google it. But they are 20 years older than me, and they are living a lifestyle Because to me, the season of your growth, I say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But the most successful people are in the decades between their 50s and their 60s because wisdom has taken over. Perception of, if there's any line, if there's anything you take this week, it's perception of. I'm telling you, it struck me like a 2x4, or Bryce scratched my face. But perception of is what you think about what you're doing. I can't control your goals, nor do I want to control your goals. What I can do is what I do very well of is I hold you accountable. I instill discipline mentality inside of you. I said to myself, and I reviewed, and like literally, I can't even I don't make this stuff up. Like, here's my schedule for today. Look what my thing is. It says, figure it out, Brock. Like, that's what I write inside. Like, you got to figure it out, Brock. Like, stop telling me. I say, have these conversations. Like, stop telling me that you don't have time. I do, like, and for Mike Kastner and those that know me really well, you'd be like, how does he possibly, like, his freaking schedule is down to 15-minute increments. How is he possibly going to squeeze more? And I know I can, because when I'm around high level people, I'm like, man, these people, I got to look at my schedule again. I gotta figure this out. I got to figure out how I can blend both. I got to figure out how I can make more money. I got to figure out how I can spend more time with my family. I got to figure out how I can put this in together and leverage more. How many of you have been thinking about that? How many of you think about that? Am I the only one? Is there other people on here? Mike, Bob, Glenn. I see D. I see Sandy. I see Pat. I see a lot of you on here. Michelle's on here. I know you don't wake up being like, oh, can't wait to relax today. Boy, let me just, I think today it's a Monday. I really worked. I really had a lot of I spent a lot of time with some family. I need some time off. Like, I don't think that enters in. I don't think that perception enters into your brain on a Monday morning. And if you are trying to challenge yourself, I need you to take a look at your calendar. I need you to really dive deeper. And I can't even begin to tell you all the lines that John shared and Patrick shared and Chris shared. But it blew my mind that I thought I knew a lot of quotes. I thought I knew a lot of different books that I read. And I was just like, I'm literally, guys, I walked away with probably 4 to 5 new books on that I got to read. And let me just tell you, the leadership books that I read fascinated me because 4 of them are about the presidents. And you know, Abraham Lincoln is one of my go-tos, but Theodore Roosevelt is another one. I had no idea, like the man behind him. On what you know what? I gotta go get the book. I gotta tell you, because if I don't, it's like I'm not doing you a service of telling you this book. I'm just gonna tell you, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Lyndon Johnson. I want to give at least some. I want to be able to give you some. I got it. Like, this is the book. Look how thick it is too. I was like, whoa, this is a really thick one here. But transformation leadership, Abraham Lincoln. Crisis leadership, Theodore Roosevelt. Turnaround leadership, Franklin Roosevelt. And visionary leadership, Lyndon Johnson. I mean, when John Maxwell tells you, like, hey, this is a book you should read, and it ends up in my bag because I was a speaker, like, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Like, it was the first time I went to a speaking engagement. They had a VIP room. They're like, did you check out the VIP room? I was like, the what room? I was like, no, I've never had a VIP room before. And then in the VIP room, there's books just like, here, take it. They want to give you. That's why I was like, I got to give this to you to share with you. Leadership in turbulent times. You'll notice it doesn't say leadership when things are blissful. It doesn't say leadership when everything is going very, very well. Leadership when you don't need to make any decisions. Leadership when everything is smooth, relationships are good, everybody's showing up to work, everything's great, people are answering my prospecting calls, plenty of listings. It says leadership in turbulent times. perception of and response to failure. Perception of and response to failure. Mike, I'm going to bring you on because you've seen me in some of my most darkest times, my most failing times, my most challenging times. And one of the things that have attracted to me you over the years and what has brought our relationship very, very close is because I lived and understand when you were going through your challenging times. And for those that have challenging times on this call, know that you are never alone, because many times I thought I was alone during some financial times. And I know Mike doesn't care that I shared some of the stories, and I won't get so deep into it, but like I would share with him some of the things that I was doing, very embarrassed by going through with it, of what I was. I mean, I had no money. I was broke as a joke, anything else. And I was just like, I don't know, Mike. I'm gonna have to foreclose. I got this going on. My car's repossessed. Da, da, da. And then Mike goes, "Oh yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about what I had." And I was like, "What? What? Seriously?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I was doing this and doing this." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't feel alone." And so there might be some people on this call, but Mike, share with us a little bit about that perception of, or your response to failure in some of your times in this on what we got left here.
Well, actually, and I'll throw it back back at you, because one of the things that I've learned over the years, and you reaffirm that, is that you think that you're going through something that no one else has ever gone through. And you think that, what you're doing is like, oh my God, I'm in IRS debt. And you're like, really, how much? And I love how you tell that story. And guys like, oh, I'm like 70 grand. I was in 150 grand. And it's like, oh, wow, really? So it's like, even when you were saying things like, I've been in property and rental property longer than I care to admit. And so it's funny because you said I went to the property management convention. I did. And people are like, oh, I've been in a long time. I remember 2008 and what it was. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm embarrassed, because how many of you remember the S&L savings and loan crisis of the late 80s and early 90s, where George W. Bush and company, they just shut all the savings and loans down across the United States. And that was, if you remember, John McCain was tied up into that, and some other big politicians. So as Brock was telling me his problem, I said, let me tell you, where at least you knew what you were getting into because of what you did. I said, imagine walking into the bank one day and everybody's gone, and there's guys in dark suits and dark sunglasses, and you're like, who are you? And you're like, we're with the government. You know, that little line, we're with the government, we're here to help. So yeah, we're here helping out the S&L. I said, well, oh, okay. Well, he goes, why are you here? And I told him. He's like, oh no, we're calling all your loans in. You're doing this. You actually owe us right now. You have 30 days to come up with, the number was astronomical. So this was like 1989, and it was like $1.3 million in 30 days. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm going to my lawyer. My lawyer is telling him what's going on. He reaches in his drawer, he pulls out this card, hands it to me. And I said, what's this? He said, it's a lawyer. I said, you're a lawyer. He goes, yeah, but I don't do bankruptcy. I said, bankruptcy? He's like, yeah. He's like, you're going to have to file bankruptcy. I said, wait, I'm not behind. I didn't do anything wrong, all this. He goes, I didn't say you did. So all this to say is, this kind of stuff in life, you do that self-reflection of, oh my God, this isn't fair. And I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm just playing by the rules, and life happens. And then it's called life. And so this is why my lesson, what I say to people out there, is right now times are tough for a lot of people and times are hard. But I could tell you, I've had so many things happen in life where you get kicked when you're down. I think that's part of getting old and being part of life, is that you literally put it into perspective of what's important in your life. And you start thinking that, okay, some of the stuff really isn't that important, because I made it through that. I can make it through this. But what I realized in my life, when people come up to me and say things like, I'm just really dealing with this issue and it's this and that. And I'd be like, really? Because let me tell you about my life. If you want to sit here and tell a story, I could tell you a story, but it's not about that. The point is, and if I said this once, I say it 10,000 times, it's about a mindset. So I had an opportunity to talk to a guy 2 days ago who came in. I just met, and my daughter knew him, and he sat down. He was just talking. He's my age. And he said, yeah, I'm really struggling with a lot. I said, well, what's going on? He says, oh man, you just wouldn't believe it. It's really horrible. I got diagnosed with cancer, and I got to go through this treatment. I said, oh, what kind of cancer? Oh, I had that. Oh, that treatment. Oh, let me tell you what, it's not that bad. He's like, looking, what? He's like, well, the doctor said. I said, oh yeah, no, I'm telling you what, it's going to be rough. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be tough. I mean, I'm the radiation treatments. I said, it's the greatest weight loss plan out there. I said, you will lose 75 to 100 pounds. I said, man, you look good on the other side. I said, so it's just a matter of mindset. I said, if you say, oh, woe is me and I got cancer, I'm going to tell you what, a lot of people get cancer in this world now, and a lot of people beat it. But if you don't have the right mindset in life and you're going out there and you're like, man, I don't have clients, or man, I'm trying to get this and I just keep plugging away and the bills keep backing up. And I'm like, so do what you take, fix it, solve it, go get a second job. You have to, just don't quit. I love, Brock was telling the story about, people digging for gold and how many people quit right before the gold is there and somebody else will come in behind them. And in an hour they dug gold because the other person quit, right when they got there. And that old saying, it gets darkest right before the dawn. And it's like, I love the saying. It's like the one you say, whatever it takes, you hang on by your fingernails. And then the guy says, and when the fingernails are gone, you hang on by the skin that's underneath your fingernails. So you find a way to make it work. It's all about your mindset. It's all about your approach into it. So again, as I tell Brock, when he was telling me his story, bringing it full circle, and it's like, I never went through divorce, but I had some challenging relationships in my life. But he's telling me about bankruptcy. He's telling me about, going through the divorce, what it's going to be like with his kids. And I'm like, let me tell you what, I can lay out the plan for you. I had divorced parents 3 and 4 times on each side. One set of my parents actually got divorced and remarried again. So it's like crazy. So it's like, you have to have the right mindset and you have to surround yourself with people like on this call. That's why I get on this call every single day. Why? Because it edifies me. It builds me up. It motivates me because it's like, okay, if I'm struggling, maybe this guy over here is, and I told Brock, I'm not bragging, but I had the best first quarter in retail sales, residential rental retail sales that I've had in my whole career ever. How is that possible? I think part of it was luck, just timing. You just keep going and going and going, and eventually numbers work. If you just keep doing the same thing over and over, the numbers are going to work themselves out. So use that as an inspiration. It's like, I don't do anything different. Look at me. Do I look like a superstar salesman? I'm not. I said, I just work my sphere. I just keep doing the same thing over and over. And again, when I saw this shift was going to happen a couple of years ago, because my adage is what goes up must come down, I said, let's pivot into some other things. Let's get into property management. Now, I don't know, that may not be the wisest thing there. But my point is, if you have a backup plan, be smart, use your mindset and say common sense. And like I tell people now, and they said, what do I do? I said, number one, get out of debt. Well, I'm accruing debt. I said, okay, well, stop. Well, I can't. I got to do this. I said, then you need more income. You either raise your income or you cut your expenses. It ain't hard. It's a mindset. Well, it means I might have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do this. Really? Let me talk to Brock, because this fool gets up with no energy at 5 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I think it's like 4:34, and goes to the gym when he has no energy to do this. Don't say you can't. You have to change your mindset and say, I will. And I have to overcome my mind. My body doesn't want to do this, but my mind says, I have to do this. And when the pain and the motivation is great enough, you will get up off that nail and you will move. But the pain is not great enough for you to do. So when you say you can't, it's like, no, the pain isn't great enough. So I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of sympathy because I could solve your problem, but the pain of the situation you're in is greater than what's going to happen if you get up and move. So if you want to do it, maybe you take a short time secondary job. And I know what I was doing? So we're growing in rental property. And I tell my daughter, I said, look around for a real estate agent that was willing to go out and take pictures of rental properties. They're rental properties. Somebody will give me 10 pictures and do it with an iPhone. I don't care. Tell them I'll give them $100. I was like, took her like 2 months to find an agent. Now, again, that's not a lot of money. We do 2 or 3 a month. So $200-300. But you know what? You would think somebody would be like, hey, Mike, I'm a real estate agent. Give me a reason to be into a property to take pictures, because if nothing else, I get to see what the rental values are in that area. I get to do this. And I'm kind of sort of in the same area. And hey, you never know. Might be a good side hustle. You might find out you love doing photography and you become a real estate photographer on the side. So think outside the box. If you're having trouble doing this, transaction coordinator, it's like, hey, if you're growing, call people. Can I give you a hand? I'm really good with numbers. I'm really good with this. So I'll end it by saying this. Life, like real estate, like everything, is about mindset. And if you put your mindset to it, you can overcome it. But if you allow yourself to think you're the only one that's experiencing these financial hardships, this professional hardships, these relationship hardships. Then you sit there and your mind plays tricks on you and you become more depressed, more down. You're like, I have no way out. And the answer is yes, you do. And what you need to do is you need to get on calls like this. You need to surround yourself with people who've been in the industry. You need to say, doggone it, if he can do it, I can do it. Can you just give me a little direction? What should I be doing today? Because I don't have any business. What would you do if you were me? And again, he said, I was at the property management convention in North Carolina last week for 2 days, and I've been doing this a long time.
Your 30-second warning.
Thank you. And I learned more in those 2 days on property management. I've been doing this a long time, and I thought I knew a lot. So all this to say, even if you think you know a lot, you know everything, talk to people who do this, and they will change your life. The end.
I love it. Guys, I'm just going to say this to you. When he was talking about his cancer with the guy who had the same cancer that Mike had, I don't know how much of a better example you can have that if it didn't strike you of saying the difference between average people and achieving people is their perception of. Mike's perception was just different than the other person's perception. My tax problem was just a different perspective than perception than other people's. That's all it is. I'm telling you, the perception of, when he talked about mindset, it is the biggest problem of you getting to the next level, is the perception of. If there's any word or phrases, 2 words I'm going to tell you to take the rest of the week, it's perception of. Guys, I appreciate everybody being on here. Happy Monday to you. Thank you so much for being on here. Guys, if there's anything that we could do to help you, push you, make you the person that you want to be, March 7th, next Tuesday, Coach and I are going to be speaking at 7 o'clock. You'll see that at bz3coachbert.com. If you want to be part of any of our coaching programs or anything else, bz3enterprises.com is where you can go. You'll learn a little bit about my schedule and what I'm doing, especially if you struggle on schedules. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on here. My boy, Chad Free, he came in from LA last night. He will be here tomorrow at 8:15. Join us for Mindset Motivation Show. Appreciate you, all. Mike, appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for sharing this morning. God bless you all. Love you all. We'll see you guys later. See ya.